Welcome back to 2% Football Camp. I'm Eduardo, Sicilia,
and today we have a very special guest with us. He's the founder of Advanced Sports Technologies. He works as the mental toughness coach for multiple NFL, NBA, and MLS teams, and also works individually with tennis players and people from all around the world. If you're watching this in the Spanish channel, I suggest you activate the closed caption option right here on the options settings. Well, with that being said, we're pretty excited to have Jim Madrid here. Thankful to have you here, Jim.
Nice to be here, Eduardo. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, diving in straight to the interview, how did you come in touch with sports? Did you play any when you were younger?
Well, let's see. Being that my last name is Madrid, soccer was in our DNA, I think. My father was our soccer coach in grade school. Man, I was just thinking about this the other day. I remember him getting me up, my brother up early to go run track up the street at like 4:30 in the morning. And he was teaching us then how important it was, exercise and sports. And then he was our coach. And, then I went to this high school when I got into ninth grade. In the private high school, they didn't have a soccer program. They had a football program. And I started playing football because the head football coach at PE was also the PE teacher, right?
Right.
And he could see that I could strike a ball pretty well. So he made me the punter on the football team. So, and I've got the surgery on my foot to prove it because I was a barefoot punter. And
look at that.
It's like crazy. So then he, just kept me in sports. I've got 5 children, and I was blessed with identical twin boys, my first kids. They're just turning 45, and they were stud athletes, and I just continued to coach them. And my son, that was Jamie and Jeremy, my son Chase. And at the same time, this whole thing about human potential and human behavior really had an interest because my old coach taught us that, and kind of introduced us what is now known as positive psychology. And I thought, well, my dad was the ultimate optimist, and what if we can use that kind of same mentality in the sports? And that's how I kind of start working. I remember I was sitting at home in Orange County, California, reading a newspaper in 1997, 96, 97, University of California Irvine men's basketball team, and the sports page then in the Orange County Register said that they were 0-14, and the head coach worried about his job. And the coach said, well, I'm really not interested. I really don't care about me. I'm more, concerned about my players' resiliency. I called up the coach, left a message, said, I think I can help you with that resiliency thing. So I start working with him. They won a few more games, but they were the happiest bunch of losers you've ever met.
Wow.
So, and to this day, I still have friends. Those boys that were on that team are my friends. They come see us all the time. And then I was introduced to the head soccer coach there, George Coons. I spent 19 years at UCI. I started working at some other colleges, the word got out, and come on, man, it was like I'm sitting on the bench at Georgia Tech men's basketball, and with Bobby Cremens, just an icon in, college basketball. And I was with him for a few seasons, and I remember I'm sitting there one day and the arena there, and we're playing North Carolina, Dean Smith. Are you kidding me?
Right.
And I'm on the bench, so it's like, it's freaking awesome. So then I just put some curriculum around it and started applying taking notes and things that worked, and did more research about how the mind is connected to performance. So there's my long-winded short answer.
Right. So before we dive into the weeds when it comes to, the idea behind your business, we all love sports, all sports junkies, we all love sports for different reasons. So
Right.
What's that one thing that pulls you to that environment?
I think it's the competitiveness, but I look at what sports has done for myself, I guess in my health. I'm 68 years old. I still play, soccer, I still play basketball. The typical benefits. There's so many learning things that you can, life lessons that you could get and apply outside of sports. Resiliency is probably number one. How fast we get over it and get on with it. my book, that's basically what it was about, was that.
Right.
And just picking yourself up and dealing with the basic challenges. I mean, you think about, like in a basketball game, how many times does that ball exchange, possession? Not just possession between each team. Even if you and I are on the same team, I pass it to you, pass it back, they steal it, blah, blah, blah. How many times in a 40-minute game, does that happen? But you're dealing with it with change like this. So the benefits of all that, I loved it. I loved it for my kids. I knew it was the work ethic. It was the self-discipline. It was, just all those kind of life lessons that just intrigues me about sports.
Here in the channel, we're big advocates for the mental side of each sport. Obviously, here in this case, especially in football, you gotta be mentally not only tough, but focused to get little advantages over your adversary. So you explained a little bit of
Right.
you getting involved on this area because of your dad. So how did all that start? How was that dynamic?
I always call that my father was the ultimate optimist. I mean, it was, and I know he didn't coin this, but he sure taught us this: expect the best, but be prepared for the worst. And so then when I went to the high school and Lou Tice was my coach and started teaching me things, visualization, writing goals down, and basically how your mind works, in performance and how your brain's connected to performance. So what started out as a personal interest became a professional passion for me. And I just, seek out some of the best in research in the area of human potential. What's going on. Now working with Dr. Kristen Willemeyer, who just wrote a book called Biohack Your Brain. It's a great book and it's easy to read, and it's about brain health. I mean, we do things to build our muscles and everything else. Well, your brain is a muscle. So, it's just those kind of things that really intrigued me about it. I don't know, God gifted me with the talent of being able to listen to the clinical and turn it into the practical. Like, for example, when I was working with Georgia Tech, I asked one of the players who went on to play in the NBA, a couple of them, and I said, well, you got a sports psychologist here. Why don't you use them? And sports psychologists are great. We need them, absolutely. And they said, well, they're too clinical, you're practical. And, I've got sports psychologists come to us and I go, guys, you got to tune it down a little bit, the big words, and just make it easy to understand, therefore easy to use. And then I put together a process instead of just talks. I don't like being called a motivational speaker. I'm not. I can't motivate you, Eduardo. I can give you the tools, we can give you the concepts, we can give you a process, but you have to do it. Right. And so that's how we got started.
So you started your research right away after high school?
Well, in high school, my mother went to work for Nordstrom. I got a job there when I was 15 years old in the stockroom. At 16, I started selling children's shoes. At 18, I thought it'd be a heck of a lot more fun to sell ladies' shoes. And then I became a manager. As you smile. And then at 19, I became a department manager for ladies' shoes. And I was applying the same mental skill set that Lou taught us in high school to my leadership. So coaching. I was the coach of that team. And it was really interesting because we had my Saturday morning sales meetings. We would start 45 minutes earlier before all the other departments did. And as other people from the other departments came in, they would come around and listen to me and assignments that I gave my team. And we were having fun and we were laughing a lot and having fun at it. And my team, they wanted to come in early. We just started formulating all that. And then the next thing, and the more that I got into it, the more I had to research more and get more. So later on, I got to meet Dr. Martin Seligman, who heads up, he started the first degree program in positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. Since then, Dr. Al Bandura at Stanford University, got to meet with him. Got to lecture with Dr. Bandura, and now I'm going to be asked to be an adjunct professor we're working on it. I'm trying to figure out if I've got the time to do it.
Right.
At Cal Lutheran University in Calabasas in Southern California.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we hear all the greats, the Bradys, the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants. Tim Grover even has a book calling these people cleaners. The sport maniacs who are mentally locked in, and they talk about toughness and resiliency. But really, how much of a difference can those terms make?
Well, it's like people that buy like motivational books, Eduardo. You could read those all day long, but if you don't apply it, it's not going to work.
Right.
But I look at too, we were born with, the genetics of how we're born in our DNA gives us the opportunity to be in, and then the environment that we grow up in, and I look at the, I was totally rooting for him, but at the same time, Patrick Mahomes, I mean, you see that picture of him, he's throwing the pass and he's like level to the ground.
Yeah.
And he put it right on target. Are you kidding me?
Right.
I mean,
insane.
Dude, but then I was watching another documentary, and you can watch a documentary like the one on Aaron Hernandez. Mm-hmm. Hell of an athlete, but his mentality was skewed. But the environment he grew up in too. My father was a truck driver. My mother was a shoe salesperson. We grew up in the hood in Seattle. We grew up in a neighborhood that was basically nothing good ever come to that neighborhood. I mean, that's the mentality to this day, Eduardo. Mm-hmm. And my father giving me that, you can do anything. And then meeting Lou, and my dad met Lou, and my dad said, whatever you do, I want you to follow that man around and listen to every word he has to say. So we are a product of our environment. And by the way, in a kind of a terrible environment like that too, we've had those bad coaches and those bad professors and those bad teachers. But I look at the Tom Brady's and the Patrick Mahomes and the Michael Jordans and and Magic Johnson, Irvin Johnson, and a good friend of mine, Byron Scott. He grew up in the hood, but to me, it's like out of a bad situation comes a positive affirmation. Like, well, when I get my chance, I'm not going to do that. This is what I'm going to do. And there's a lot of that. I always tell classes, you've got to become bigger than your environment. Think bigger than your environment.
Okay, so let me ask you something. So we're talking about the brain as a muscle that needs training. And we know that when it comes to the physical side of things, maybe to make my legs bigger and stronger, I need to squat. But depending on my body type and different aspects, I'll have to train differently than other people. Is that the same case for the brain?
Same concept for the brain, right? You take somebody that grows up in a well-to-do neighborhood, has had all the resources at his or her beck and call, and then you look at some of the people in the underserved communities, and they don't have all that. I mean, Edgar Martinez is a good friend. He's a baseball Hall of Famer, and he grew up in Puerto Rico. You know what he used? Had one of the best batting averages ever. You know what he used growing up? You know what he played with? A stick and rocks. That's how he practiced. Stick and rocks.
Rice caught bricks in his house.
Right. My soccer shoes all through grade school and middle school were a pair of Converse with the sole separating from the shoe. It was duct tape around the sole of the shoe. That was my soccer shoe. And then when I started playing, on the football team, they gave me these cleats, and they were the most uncoordinated things. Those were old school cleats. That's why I said, I can't kick with this crap. I used my barefoot. It created some arthritis in my foot, and it created some bone spurs. And I had to have those removed a couple of years ago. But it has a lot to do with your upbringing and those people around you. Somebody that mentored me, and there was a lot of mentors, and sometimes people just don't realize just the power of their words. I had a wonderful aunt, my mother's sister, and my mother was beyond great. She was fantastic. And her sister, my Auntie Mary, and she grew up about 2 blocks away from us. Big Italian family. My mother's side was Italian, my father's side was Spanish. grew up around my mother's side of the family. You know, we had this great big Sunday dinners, you know, and big families, all the families would come over, and they would always make us do little routines, dancing, singing, or something like that. I got up and sang a song and danced. And it's like I was 6, 7 years old, Eduardo, and I remember this vividly. It was in our kitchen, and as I was walking out the kitchen after I did my little performance, my Auntie Mary said, "Jimmy will always be okay in front of people. He's going to do really well." She didn't say that to me. She told all of my other aunts and uncles and my parents that Jimmy is going to do okay, and that stuck with me my entire life. To this day, it stuck with me. So the power of those, that third-party affirmation that she made, and I've picked up on those little things along the way. And that's what I've concentrated on my life, even when the hard times have come.
Yeah, like you said, the words are important. And let's say I am someone extremely talented physically. Like you mentioned Aaron Hernandez, who had an unfortunate set of events and did horrible things. What do I do to start training my brain and wire myself that way? And what's the biggest benefit of it?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I just got a phone call today from a parent, and her daughter is a freshman in college, and we've got she's a baseball player. This is another one. She's a baseball player and softball, and she's at a high-level school, Division I school, and practices really well. We hear this a lot, and that is that game day she gets the yips. You know what the yips are, right? You know, she's an outfielder, and she can't throw the ball to second base.
Right.
So, you know, but what is she thinking about? She's thinking about, I hope she gets the fear, which causes anxiety. And the fear is, she's thinking wrong thinking. She's thinking about what she hopes she doesn't do, you know? And I had a high school swimmer, great athlete, 500 meter, she'd get halfway through the event and she thought she was drowning, you know? And so, yeah, it's wrong thinking. And what our program's all about, what I've created over the years, is a process for right thinking. You know, I've had football players in the past that were going down that wrong way. You know, I had a player, guys played for the Chargers many, many years ago. When the Chargers picked him up, he got a $300,000 signing on bonus. $100,000 signing on bonus. At the time, I think it was a $300,000 a year minimum in the NFL. His worldly possessions was in a hotel room. He didn't see a dime out of the $100,000 because he owed it back child support. But he found his way back up to, you know, South Central, where all of his buddies were, all the time. It was like that was no problem. But he just was on a downward spiral, you know. And to get him to kind of get out of that, it was really difficult. I mean, I had to get in his face, and we finally did. Then you got the other sports figures that, you know, we were watching Dateline last night on a player, an NBA player, that blew through $55 million. And my wife's going, how does somebody do that? How do they blow through, you know, 7 years in the NBA, making $55 million, and now he's dead broke? I mean, broke. And I go, you know, everybody's around taking a little piece of that, a little piece of that. And so, you know, it's trying to catch these. And that's one of my mission is to get to these kids prior to that they've never had it before. They have coddled these players because of their athletic ability. And then, you know, I've seen it in colleges where they, you know, they're taking care of them, making sure that they, you know, get the right grades. They pay 2 years. They get picked up by the NBA, NFL, MLB, Major League Soccer, whatever, and we throw a boatload of money at them that they've never had. We expect them to act like you and me, like my wife. No, they've never been exposed to that before. Shaquille O'Neal said this. I heard an interview with Shaquille O'Neal when he first got his $1 million Reebok endorsement. Mm-hmm. He said, yeah, I didn't know who FICA was my enemy. You know, the federal income tax that they take out. No, he didn't have $1 million. He only had 600,000. But every time he spent money, he was subtracting it from the million, not the 600,000. The next thing you know, he was upside down 200 grand,
So, like you mentioned, your surroundings are important. How valuable is to have mentors and the right structure around you for you not to fall into these mistakes?
It's very important. You listen to a lot of I don't care whether they're in sports or business or whatever, it's successful. There's always been somebody that's been there for them that has made a difference in their lives and kind of, gotten their shit a little bit, when they start to get off track, and they do. And it's very important. Find a mentor, if you don't have one, find one. A mentor is someone that believes in you, sees more in you than you see in yourself. And that's the kind of people that's somebody you want to be able to find.
Of course. When it comes to AST, after all your progress and all you did throughout your time investigating and applying your knowledge, how was AST created?
I'll tell you how it was created. It was on the corporate side. I put together a curriculum and a process there, but it started off with the basic, if you're going to improve your company and develop your company, you got to develop your people, not just in the skill set that they have, but in the mindset that they have, believe in themselves, believe in their coworkers, believe in their direct, manager, believe in the leadership of the company and believe in the direction of the company. And is this a place where I can, achieve both my personal and professional goals? But it starts with the individual. So every time we would do a workshop, or it's usually about a 2-day workshop around the 10 principles, inevitably we'd get somebody come up and say, a parent say, hey, do you do this for kids? And kind of interesting enough is that Lou started off with kids, and parents came to him and said, can you do this for adults? So it was the reverse for me. And so in 2005, we scaled down our adult program down to that 13 to 18-year-old program called the 7 Fundamentals of Mental Fitness. I thought this will get into schools, no problem. And what we got from schools was, we just don't know where we could fit this in. Well, okay. So it kind of sat on the shelf. And in 2012, 13, 14, 15, I was working with the Seattle Sounders, helped Pete Carroll write his Win Forever program. And the owner of the Seattle Sounders, Adrian Hanauer, and I owe a lot to him, he came to me one day and said, what are you up to? And I told him, I said, I got this youth program. Youth sports at that time was a $7 billion a year industry. Today it's over 19 or close to $20 billion a year industry in the US alone. And he said, well, look, I want to help you. I want to get this thing going. So he kind of backed me and opened a lot of doors for us. And here we are today. And where we're going tomorrow is big time. We're blowing it out.
I bet you guys have come a long way, and you are huge. So how do you guys apply this knowledge? How do you bring all that theoretical knowledge that you talked about by the experts and bring it to the table and set it down for kids?
Well, I don't know if we have enough time to explain that, Eduardo, but okay. I continue to look at, and I've got another, Dr. Willmeyer in her research in neuroscience. It's like her and I just pick her brain, and then she's opened doors for us, and we have a conversation about even what the kind of nutrition to have for your brain, that, your brain is a muscle, and you've got to eat the right foods and so on. Sleep. Who's somebody that's great in mindfulness that she knows? And we've looked into that, and we've applied that now. That's a big part of our trainings now is mindfulness and breathing. And so that's, we just kind of look at what's out there. We're looking at assessment tools also and measurement tools. We're researching. I was on the call today with a group that seems to have a psychometric, evaluation of yourself prior to and then post after they've gone through our programs, and they continue to go through our, it's interesting because the basic program, the 7 Fundamentals of Mental Fitness, for that 13 on up, it really introduces them to this kind of thinking that they do need to, be part of the mental side of the game. Me growing up, There really wasn't that part, except for what Lou taught us way back then. But, it was what they could do the best, in the area of motivating us and keeping us on track. You've got the coaches that want to tear you down and then build you back up. What a stupid way to, get the best out of your team. Tell you, Eduardo, you're nothing, but if you listen to me, I think I can do something for you. It's like, what? Right. Old school way. So we kind of take all that, like yourself, you're open to it. And if you're open to it and you see the value in it, then you're going to want more. And we want to be that resource for coaches and for players and for parents, by the way, and for parents.
If you could put the mentality you're trying to install on your clients, how will you describe it in 1 or 2 sentences?
So if we can increase their belief in what they can cause, bring about, or make happen by just 5%, what kind of team would you have? And we call that self-efficacy. So that's our process. Dr. Al Bandura at Stanford came up with this in the mid 80s. We've applied it, and you can hear his, how he described it. It's very clinical, but at the end of the day, when I asked him, is this it? Self-efficacy is one's appraisal of oneself, of what you can cause, bring about, or make happen, and it's job or task specific. So how efficacious are you in doing podcasts? How efficacious am I at being a forward on a soccer team, of scoring, okay? And it's job or task. Now, if you increased each player on your team by just 5%, what kind of team would you have? Okay, now you've got something. Now what we do is the next step to our approach then is collective efficacy. Now that's a team or a group's appraisal of what together we can cause, bring about, or make happen. That's basically our process. So we know how to get that extra 5%, and then let's apply it now to the general population of the team.
Okay, so AST takes care of my team. You train them, you get them to believe individually and team-wise. Now, as a coach, like we're talking about bad ways of coaching, how would a coach assist your work, your job, and continue that process to keep producing those results?
It's funny because, all right, so now you're not a football coach. You don't know anything about football. Well, you know a little bit about football. And now you go to some coaching camps to learn how to do practice sessions and formations and everything right now. And you start, all of a sudden, you come out of that with a language, don't you? You come out with a language, right? And, my wife's sitting there watching the Super Bowl and they're saying, Tony Romo was saying something and look at that, whatever it was. And she goes, what does that mean? See what I mean? Right. It's like he's speaking a foreign language to her, right? And soccer, same thing, and tennis, whatever it may be. It's the same thing with us. And so we have to explain that to coaches that, you're not going to be a sports psychologist. We're not asking you to do that. But what you will learn from our courses, you will just become second nature, as if it was second nature to you as a football coach, baseball, whatever sport that you're coaching. It just becomes second nature. You just start applying that. You don't even know you're doing it. All of a sudden you're speaking, and your team is speaking that same language.
Of course, yeah.
And we go through a certification process, just like a soccer coach. I got my D license or C license, so I had to do 2 weekends. 1 weekend to get my D license, and then 2 more weekends to get my C license. And then I came out talking a whole different language. It's the same thing with us.
So you can also instruct the coaches to keep your work going afterwards.
Right, as a continuous, and therein lies what we're working on now as a platform for a resource center for that coach to come and grab something out of that, because here's the challenge that he's having with his team right now. And he can grab something on confidence, because I've got 2 players that practice well in training days, but get in game situation, they fold. So how do I work with somebody like that? What have I got to get them to do? And those kind of scenarios, will have all those different types of scenarios on the platform that we're building.
And so you are working with wonderful people like Will Blackman, and you have had clients like Pete Carroll, Richard Sherman, important people in football and other sports like the MLS. What have you learned? What has been the biggest 3 bullet points that you have learned throughout all this journey?
Good question. I would say that personally, again, I'm always working on self too. I'm worthy of being in front of these elite athletes, these multi-millionaire, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies all over the world. That's number one. Number two is that enabled to do that, I've got to continue to improve myself, my knowledge. I can't sit still and think that I know everything. No, I'm more of the messenger than anything else. And I always give credit where credit is due. And also, there's a need for it. There is an absolute need now more than ever with COVID-19. These young student athletes and everybody, these kids are suffering from emotional neglect and they're psychologically needy. And it's my purpose is to continue to research and fight for them and be an advocate for those young people that have been isolated due to this pandemic, that have had domestic violence up, depression, cases of depression, anxiety, drug abuse. You know the story, it's all up. So what I've learned from all that is that we've got a valuable, some valuable information. And we're, by the way, we're not the end all be all. There is a lot of other people out there doing the same, trying to do the same thing. And I want to make that impact. Our vision of our company is to, by year end 2024, is to graduate 500,000 kids, to make that positive impact in their lives for the rest of their lives, not just while they're in a certain sport in a certain school.
So the impact goes beyond the field or court.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, through the window of sports, we can give these kids the mental skills, the life skills that are going to impact their lives positively for the rest of their life, and being able to deal with life's everyday, the basic challenges of life, and most important, that they're worthy of happiness and success in their life.
It's awesome. Yeah, of course. You just mentioned it. We're going through different and struggling times. All around the world. What's one advice you would give parents or coaches or teachers to deal with this new generation of kids who are dealing with all these aspects that we were not used to as human beings?
Number one, take their damn social media away from them. That's the number one. And I'm not kidding. Bringing up my own kids, my 2 youngest, my daughter Devin is 23 years old. My son Ethan is 19 years old. Will be 20 in a couple of weeks. And, I remember my daughter, she was on some program and some guy was asking her these vulgar questions. And, it's like, we didn't just open the world to Devin. The world got opened up to my daughter. And that's scary. That's really scary. And today there was I wish I had it with me. It's called Digital Emotion Contagion, where you and I could have this wonderful conversation right now, and then we get on Facebook or Twitter and read, "I'll be a son of a," but who is that guy, right? And it's like, and all of a sudden my emotions just got hijacked by that. So that's one thing. The other thing is get them into sports, get them, whether it be sports. My daughter was in theater, and same thing. Get them into a club, get them doing something extra, and also get them volunteering. One of the things that we do with teams, young teams, especially high school teams, is we started this a few years ago with my son's soccer team. The coach said, "Jim, what are we going to do? They're just not talking to each other and not connecting. And the last thing you need to do is have a team that doesn't communicate." So we took them to a mall and we teamed them up with not their friends. So you and I are friends. So we always hang out together during practices, after practice, before practice, and everything else. But we don't, and we're a couple of seniors in high school. And we're not talking to the freshman that made the team or the sophomore that made the team on the varsity team. So now I'm hooked up with that freshman player. You're hooked up with a sophomore player. And here's your job. You guys got to go out and you got to perform, and we put them on a mall and we let them walk around. So Eduardo, you got to do 2 random acts of kindness, and while you're doing them, I'm going to record you doing them. Okay. And then we send them in, and we come back in, we put their videos up on the screen, And you and I pick, because let's say we were teamed up, then you and I pick out the best one of you, best one of me, or whatever, and we throw it up there, and it's Eduardo. Guys, check this out. Eduardo was helping this little lady put her groceries in her car, and the lady thought she was attacking him. She started hitting me and everything else, and then she finally figured out he wasn't doing that. She gave him a hug. She was talking to him. And Eduardo, how'd that make you feel? And the kid says, that was amazing. That was one of the best things I think I've done in a long, long time. And then we ask them, what did you get out of this exercise? They go, there's more to a team than just me, that we're part of a bigger picture. And so, those are the kind of things, the exercises and activities that we ask them to do. And it's amazing to watch the transformation of these kids. And that's a life lesson. It's not just a teaming thing. It's really a life lesson. These kids can't see past the end of their nose, and we're getting them to see and open up the world to them in the right way instead of the wrong way.
How valuable is that positive social skills that we all need and lack nowadays?
It's extremely valuable and very, very important. But at the same time, we have to be looking at, I use the term, a realistic optimist instead of a realistic pessimist. It's almost like, hey, we throw something out there and somebody says, come on, let's get real. Get real, that could never happen. That's a realistic pessimist. A realistic optimist looks at things and goes, geez, I wonder if that could work. Let's take a look at that. Let's see if that could work. Instead of shutting it down and putting it down and say, hey, that could never happen. Let's be real. Let's be real. I was in a meeting the other day, and I talked about I was doing a lecture, and I started off by talking anything's possible. And a guy goes, come on, not everything's possible. I just went, kidding me? Yeah, don't give it a chance. Let's not even give it a chance. The saying is, the fear isn't setting your goals so high that you don't achieve it. The fear is you set it too low and you do achieve it. You know what? And if you set it this high and you only get to here, is that so bad? But if you set it down to here and you get there, you level off.
Right.
High performance, elite athletes are going like this all the time. The closer they get to it, they just keep setting the mark higher and higher.
Better to fail at trying than never trying at all.
Never trying at all. And there's a lot of people that use the old thing, well, aren't you setting them up for failure? What do we learn the best from? Our failures. So yeah, you know what? I've done that on purpose to my own kids. I've set them up to fail and say, well, how did that feel? Now what are you going to do about it?
Right.
How are you going to, what did you learn from that?
Hey, big question. So I have read a lot of books and articles written by experts who talk about if technology is here, because technology is here to stay, and we can take social media away from new generations, what about making a conscious effort on having them follow accounts and leaders and mentors who are going to brainwash them into a positive way of thinking? What do you think about that?
Well, absolutely. But see, the safeguard against some of that right now, it's not there though, Eduardo. We haven't hit that point. I think we're starting to move in that direction. And I think more and more parents are starting to see that. But now, with new technology that's coming out, new apps that are coming out, that, DirecTV and all those, I can put the parent thing on there. And I think that's what we have to really look at. And whoever can come up with that app to say, okay, here's, this phone, remember now you've all heard it said that this thing has more power on this, that power, the guys landing on the moon in 1969, there's more capabilities on this thing, and if we can direct and, and of course these kids get smarter and smarter with it, right? So, being able to control what they have access to and what has access to my child on this, that would be a very smart thing to do. So even with my grandchildren now, we're very, and both my sons that have kids, they're trying to control all that right now. How much? And come on, you can't take it away. They're going to be on a computer. This is their life now. They're going to be on on a cell phone or an iPad or whatever, or a tablet. That's their future. That's definitely their future. But let's have some controls on that. It's like, I don't know, when VCR tapes first came out, we could play, movies in our house, go to Blockbuster and stuff. Are you going to let your kid go to Blockbuster and grab a XXX movie and come home and watch it? No. You controlled what they were watching. So that time has come now. We really need to do that. And if you don't have those controls, don't just give open source to your kid and hand them a phone and say, go get them. My daughter, when that happened, she had an iPhone. She was in ninth grade. I took the phone away from her for a month and got her a flip phone because we needed to have communication with her.
Right.
But I got her a flip phone and it had an antenna on it. And all her friends are walking around with an iPhone, and she's got, and a buddy of mine, they were carpooling together with this family friends of ours. He sent me a picture. He said, Madrid, I just went to the dentist. My teeth are hurting. I said, why? And he says, well, every time your daughter gets on the phone, puts that antenna, my fillings start to hurt. And she sent a picture. She's in the back seat going like this with her flip phone. And it came with a handy dandy poster too, Eduardo.
Right.
It was really nice. Yeah. You do it again, that's what you're going to get. Now, you want to text? Go ahead and text. But to get to Jay, you got to go through
forever, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She learned her lesson.
Hey, to wrap it up, one advice you would give to all these kids that are going up there trying to be student athletes?
To be a student athlete, you've got to have a great work ethic and self-discipline. You combine those two things together. Self-discipline's probably first, and then followed up with that work ethic, because that's what life's all about after you become, after you're a student athlete. Then that's what life's all about.
Way to cap it off. Jim, once again, thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate your time. And once again, for you guys, I'm Eduardo Sicilia, a special guest today, Jim Madrid, and this was 2% Football Camp.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Peace out. Later, man.